Just shy of about 100 days back in office, Donald Trump, he isn't exactly convincing Americans he's up for the job. There's a brand new AP poll, and it finds just 18% of Americans think that he's been a great president so far. 13% say he's good. The same amount rank his performance as poor, and nearly 4 out of 10 say he's a terrible president. His tanking approval ratings come as voters absorb the high cost of his tariffs and witness massive cuts to the federal workforce, not to mention his attacks on the rule of law. According to a Fox poll, just 44% of voters approve of the job that he's doing. And that's the worst approval rating in that poll at this point in a presidency this century. And it's well below the numbers of President Biden's, Obama, and George W. Bush during their first 100 days. It is even 1 point worse than his approval at the 100-day mark of his first term. Now, you know, we like to say about polls, they're just a snapshot in time, but this, and you know, they're indicative of how voters are feeling right now. They're not a crystal ball, but oh goodness, the voters are not feeling confident.
They're not feeling confident. I don't know. I don't know how much I want to put into this right now.
Agreed.
You know, it's simply. This hasn't settled out yet, and I just wish people stop acting like it has. Everything that has occurred in the first quarter of this year is not going to be felt until the end of the second quarter of this year, meaning when we get into late May and June, you'll start to see the full impact of the trade war, because that's the reality. So these numbers, maybe they're a precursor, maybe, and you know, that's something that we can get into a little bit more, that they're kind of setting up a narrative to come. So, I just don't want to overshoot the moon here with this idea that somehow, oh, my God, look at this. He's 13% of the people like him. Slow your roll on this. There's still a lot more that Donald Trump has that he can do to make those numbers worse, or he can actually turn the corner a little bit and have those numbers tick up. So
here's what I think is interesting about those numbers, which is we talk a lot about the incompetency of this administration, where they have been very competent and very effective is in swiftly implementing some of the elements of Project 2025, particularly when it comes to deconstruction of the administrative state, to use their language, not mine. If that is not what people voted for, that is what they have gotten in the first 100 days. That has been the priority. And so I think some of what you're seeing is a response to where this administration has put their time, their efforts, and their energies.
You know the numbers that I'm really interested in looking at? Numbers, but also, you know, I love a focus group. These polls can tell you anything, the sample size, but I want to know what the focus groups say, particularly focus groups of Trump voters, maybe Biden Trump voters, right? People who voted for President Biden in 2020. Voted for Trump in 24. And I say that because those are the folks that if they are saying, okay, we don't really like what we're getting from Donald Trump, I think that's a bigger indicator that folks are turning on him. Right now, I think we see that the people that did vote for him don't like him. Some of the people that voted for him don't like the economy, but maybe they still think he's good or giving him the benefit of the doubt. So it remains to be seen, folks.
So we can get into it now.
Joining us now is MSNBC senior contributing editor Michele Norris and MSNBC political analyst Brendan Buck. He served as press secretary, advisor, all of the things, a comms guru, if you will, to former House Speaker John Boehner.
I want to start with you, Brendan, because I want to pick up on the point that I was just making, that I think there's this tendency when numbers come out initially and they're really bad for any president. But, you know, especially for someone like Trump, everybody wants to jump on him and say, oh, my God, yes, finally, you know, people don't like him. I'm a little bit like, OK, I understand, but there are things that he can do. And we've already seen that if he eases the gas off the gas on trades, that changes the dynamic on Wall Street and Main Street, and people's attitudes could shift. I still think that's baked into this that has not been realized yet is the damage that's already been done with the firing of a lot of federal employees who manage a lot of the nation's business. That's going to come home soon. But what's your take on how we've sort of framed this initial?
Well, I certainly agree with you. Obviously, it's just a snapshot, but I certainly don't think it's going to get better for him anytime soon. I mean, this is a president who absolutely believes in what he's doing, and they throw around this word mandate a lot. They think they had a mandate to come in. And I don't know that they actually did have a mandate to do that. And every president says that they have a mandate. If he had a mandate to do anything, it was to address the cost of living.
Yes.
And he's certainly not doing that. I think what's amazing in all of this polling is how much he has undermined the advantages he had going in. He had a real advantage on the issue of immigration. Now he's underwater on immigration. That's remarkable. And of course, on the economy. This economy was ready to get going. It was going to be roaring if he had just gotten out of the way a little bit. Yeah. They were going to extend the tax law, just keep things humming, especially in contrast to what we had been through under Joe Biden. Just stay out of the way. You would have been fine. And he's totally blown it. To your point, tariffs are just getting started. This is only going to get worse. You know, if anything is going to sort of check him, the guardrails are public opinion. So maybe he'll see some of this and realize that he shouldn't go forward. But he's not shown himself to be somebody who,
recalibrates.
Yeah, exactly. If there's anything we know, he believes in the tariffs. So it's not like he's just going to completely abandon this concept. And as long as he keeps even just flirting with it, markets are not going to be happy, and he's going to pay the price.
Markets are not going to be happy, and consumers are not going to be happy. Michele Norris, the Wall Street Journal, had a piece out about consumer sentiment, the way that Americans as consumers are looking at this economy. This is what they write. American households ended April feeling much worse about the economy than they did in March, according to a closely watched measure of consumer sentiment. The Michigan survey said people expect weaker income growth for themselves in the year ahead. Slower consumer spending can turn a gloomy mood into a real economic slowdown. If they had come in, Michele, and focused on the economy as they had promised voters in their first 100 days, I have to imagine these numbers would be in a different place.
Oh, they'd absolutely be in a different place. I mean, what you're seeing now is consumer malaise across the board. And, you know, you were saying earlier that Donald Trump doesn't necessarily recalibrate. He does sort of backtrack on some of his steps. And even if he tried to do that on the tariffs right now, it's too late. I mean, there are boats that should be on the water with goods that should be on their way to the United States. And at this point, they're not going to get here in time. And so we're really going to see in the second and third quarter, you might not see empty shelves, but you're going to see shortages. And that's really going to affect people. And part of the problem is there's the sentiment about the government and then the sentiment about the economy. It's possible that the sentiment about the government could turn around if they started to communicate a little bit differently, if they started to bring back some of the federal workers that they had fired. But in terms of the economy, I mean, the past shows that when you see this kind of consumer sentiment drop, this kind of malaise, there's a hangover effect. And it takes a long time for that to bounce back. And it's just not going to happen if people are still feeling it in their wallets.
Yeah, I mean, NBC has a story about product shortages from Shannon Petty piece. And they write, companies have been canceling their shipments of goods from China and halting new orders. Typically, U.S. retailers will be ramping up their orders for two critical periods later this year, the fall back to school shopping season and the winter holidays. And the pullback is creating uncertainty about whether U.S. shoppers will have the selection of goods they've grown accustomed to in the coming months. This is the point Michele was just making, that the containers are empty. I mean, we had Congressman Robert Garcia on a couple weeks ago, and he represents the Long Beach area. He is formerly the mayor of Long Beach, and he's been talking to the shipping container folks, and they're like, baby, what is going on? It's looking bleak. They are appealing to the administration because their business is hurting. And when we talk about the businesses hurting, it always trickles down to the people, to the workers, to the consumers.
I mean, and the president will come out with all of the talking points he wants, but empty
the economy's great.
Empty shelves are going to trump
undeniable
any talking point that they have. And you know, and again, I don't know that anybody signed up for any of the stuff that the president is talking about. Even tariffs were at one point popular, and he has now made them extremely unpopular. But we haven't even felt the impacts of this yet. And I don't know that they have a whole lot to answer. I don't know that the people can trust the president after this on the economy, but they also don't have like a next phase. Obviously, they're talking about a large tax bill that they're going to move through Congress. Here's a little secret about that tax bill. I'm really proud of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act to help pass it the first time around. All they're talking about doing is keeping tax rates exactly where they are today. That's not going to boost the economy anything. I don't know how that's going to create some kind of turnaround. So, like, you know, what exactly are they going to do to fight back on the tariffs? And that's been their message, is just hold on a second. We're going to have the tax bill. The tax bill isn't cutting taxes for most people. It's just keeping them the same.
It's keeping them same. So that raises an interesting point, Michele, that I found in the headline, voters warn Trump, MAGA, but not like this, noting, you just can't make it up, right? In less than 100 days, President Trump has squandered his polling strength on the two issues most fundamental to his reelection: the economy and immigration. That's a major red flag for a president whose chaotic style is only tolerated when it delivers results. So to the points that Brendan has already made about the economy, when you now layer into that mix the immigration piece, yes, they're watching people get snatched off the streets, and folks are applauding that. Yes, crack down on immigration. But there are other sides to this story that are also emerging that are showing a very dark side to this policy that I'm curious how that resonates. We get the economy. Oh, my cupboards are bare and my bank account is low. But then what happens, do you think, with that other piece? Is that a salvageable piece for Trump? Or does that, too, hit the public in a way in which it just doubles down on the numbers that Brendan was talking about?
Well, one of his strengths has always been that he's been able to he's used these cultural wedges in a very effective way. You know, when he talks about making America great again, we all know what that means. You know, it means going back to a time where certain people felt like they had certain privileges and they had an easy pass through life. And yes, that does make you feel good, but it doesn't necessarily put gas in your tank. It doesn't lower the price of eggs. And so you see these two things sort of clashing, you know, the cultural wars that they still use to try to gin up support, but at the same time, they've undermined their ability to do that effectively because of the economy. And even on the immigration issue, where they normally have strong support, you're starting to see some softening in those numbers also. And I will give the Democrats some credit here in creating a narrative that has become rather effective in showing that this is not just about Abrego Garcia. This is a much bigger issue, that he represents a threat to the rule of law in America. And if this could happen to you, I mean, the video that really stands with me is when the building trades union head stood up and said, this is one of our brothers. And a room full of men, largely white men, men in suits, are standing up and applauding and chanting, bring him home. So this is an issue that's softened for Donald Trump as well. And I agree with Brendan. The image of empty shelves, you know, when you start seeing that on the front page of the newspaper, when you pick up your device and you see that and you're scrolling through TikTok or Instagram, wherever you are, and you're seeing town after town with these empty shelves, that is a durable image. That is the kind of image that is like a breadline image in, you know, during the Depression in 1931. It's going to be really hard for them to come back with that. And then when that happens, the currency around these cultural wedge issues perhaps is not as strong as it was before. Because what they're doing is they're giving people a sense of strength. And that may make you feel good, the idea that, oh, I'm better than that guy down the road, or I'm better than that group of people. But that doesn't help you feed your kids.